Alright, peace and greetings YouTubers. Welcome to part 10 of my R&B is Dead, What the F Happened series. Yes, I know it's been a very long time since I made one of these, but things happen and you get busy, and you know I'm very busy with the Generation Black web series, which you should all check out, and at this point I'm sure there should be some type of link popping up. And also just because musically I'm so distant from what's current that I needed to take some time to really go and dig back into what everybody's listening to, especially the 18 to 25 demographic, and really know what's going on. That way when I'm making these videos, they're still informative and I actually know what I'm talking about. Okay, I just can't always reference everything that happened in the 90s on every video. But anyway, alright, so as we know, a lot has changed in the music industry between 2011 and the present. Basically, one of the predictions that I made in part 1 through 9, or one of them, I predicted that EDM would die out. I also predicted that the urban R&B sound would become popular again, but not by urban R&B artists, more so pop artists who are utilizing and appropriating the sound for the moment. And it's actually all happened, so it's kind of interesting to see where things are going. But what I want to do, because I don't want to turn this into a video where I'm, oh, but they still in our sound and blah blah blah, because in all honestly, that's always happened. So we know that happened, so let's talk about what R&B acts should be doing while that is happening. And when I'm talking about what's happening, I'm talking about the fact that, you know, the majority of every R&B hit that was a mainstream success was performed by somebody who was not a native R&B artist, meaning basically they weren't black, or but basically they were a pop artist that did the sound. And you know, if you followed and you saw the Billboard article, it talked about how in 2013 not a single Hot 100 song on that went to #1 was actually performed by a black artist. And even like on the R&B charts, the biggest hits on the R&B charts in 2013 were by white artists, Justin Timberlake and Robin Thicke. So the industry is in a place where all of the different cultures are borrowing from each other, but there is one group of entertainers who are not quite getting the same opportunities. You know, R&B artists right now who are already doing what everybody, you know, who are already doing in 2011 and 2012 what everybody's doing now in 2014. Basically, it's like they created the invite to this party, and then when they got to the party, they were not invited. Or, you know, actually no, they weren't invited. So now we're going to talk about, you know, what they can do to at least kind of get in the party before everybody leaves out. Because what's going to happen is by the time they get invited to the party of mainstream success, you know, by then all the food's going, they're going to get to that table and there's going to be like 3 Doritos in the bowl, and that's just the way it is. So, moving on. In R&B, at this point in 2014, there are 2 types of R&B artists. You have the R&B artists who have the potential, or who used to be in a position where they were somewhat popular and relevant in mainstream pop culture, and they were somewhat a household name at some point, or at least close to it. These are the Monicas, these are the Sierras, these are the Brandys. These, honestly, are the Ushers. At this point, he's fallen into that category. And the Kelly Rowlands, okay? These are the acts where, if they did get in the party, as I said, they got in very late. So they're getting the few crumbs out of the Doritos bowl. Alright? These are the entertainers who, if they get the right people behind them, they make the right strategies, they can still somewhat have a chance at enjoying some of that mainstream success and becoming great in the graces of the mainstream pop audiences. Because as I told you in one of the other videos, pop has no specific sound or specific audience. Pop is just what is popular at the moment, and it's what the masses flock to. The masses overall have no strong distinction of what they prefer musically. They literally prefer what radio will feed to them, because it's like sugar and candy. It's just whatever radio tells you is good, the masses will flock to it and say it's good. If the radio says it sucks and we don't want to play it, the masses say it sucks and they don't play it. Well, I never heard that on the radio, it must not be good. That's the mindset many have. Okay, so you have those acts who are, well, we'll say they're the type A. The type A is the ones who are going to get in the party, but they got there late, and the party's almost over, and yeah. Then you have the type B R&B artists. These are the artists who are never going to get that opportunity. And it's not a negative thing, but in all honesty, everybody doesn't get to be a Beyonce or a Rihanna. And I'm not talking about Beyonce and Rihanna the entertainer, but Beyonce and Rihanna the movement, as far as having strong label support, as far as having the opportunity to make demands, as far as being able to sell out stadiums and arenas around the world, as far as being a household name in every country around the world. Somebody has to be the D-list, C-list act. Somebody, you know, everybody can't be Beyonce. Somebody has to be that entertainer that people kind of know about. And these are, you know, these are the Little Mo's and the Shantae Moores and the Layla Hathaways, as much as I love Layla Hathaway, she's one of my favorite artists. And, you know, At this point, you know, the lettuces and TGTs and Tank and basically Tyrese has kind of fallen from this type A position to type B. So these are the entertainers who they get to the party, but the party's over. The police have been called, everybody's left, so now they're like, well, what do we do now? Well, let's just go hit up some bars, hit up the club. But it's 3 in the morning. Everything is already closed and shut down. So they're on their way back home, and they're going to go home pissed off and tweet about it. Okay? So that's what happens. And the reason why that happens is because usually type B artists don't get the same type of marketing promotion as the type A. And what happens with the type A is that a lot of times they've fallen off for the reasons that they are now being given the type B treatment, even though they're type A artists. And also, when it comes to being an artist, your main purpose, as I said in another video, is you're supposed to keep the fans you have and bring in new fans, and also keep everybody happy. Your mission is to aim to become a social luxury in entertainment. When I say social luxury, I mean you are basically, it's popular and it's cool to like you, whether people like your music or not. Somebody like Jay-Z is a social luxury. A random man named Bob in North Dakota knows who Jay-Z is and is probably familiar with one Jay-Z song. He may never buy a Jay-Z album, he doesn't have any of that stuff, but hey, if Jay-Z comes to town, you know, if he has some company tickets, he just might go to the Jay-Z concert because socially it's been appropriated that Jay-Z is cool to like. And Jay-Z is something that everyone must be a part of and embrace and experience, or you're just not cool. Same thing can be said for somebody like Madonna as a touring artist. I know she's not an R&B act, but for the sake of this argument, Madonna is a luxury or a social luxury when it comes to concert tours. Even though Madonna basically does not really sell records in the United States anymore and doesn't really get big radio hits, when Madonna comes to your town, it's a guarantee that she will sell out whatever arena or stadium is in your city, because to the masses, Madonna has become a social luxury. She is a must-see. Now, even though she's not on stage really doing a whole lot, and even though, in my opinion, I think Janet Jackson would give a hell of a show compared to Madonna, you know, Janet's not in that social luxury bubble as a arena spectacle entertainer to all groups of people anymore. To the urban demographics, yes, we still love her, she's royalty, but to most pop audiences or to most white people, they've forgotten her. So Madonna is a social luxury. Beyonce is a social luxury. Household name. It's cool to like Beyonce. Honestly, funny thing, I got to go to the White House Christmas dinner and meet the Obamas in December. And then the following day was Beyonce's concert, or the third show of the Miss Carter tour at the Verizon Center. And it was so funny. So I'm in the White House with all these dignitaries and rich people and all these people who probably would never speak to me on the sidewalk. And it was funny hearing their conversations because they're talking about, oh, I'm going to the Beyonce show tomorrow. You know, I'm very excited. You know, I have to go in there and do my single ladies. And I'm like, wow, Beyonce, you really are a social luxury. Because it, at the moment, it's cool to like Beyonce. Even if you don't buy her albums, her name is everywhere, her image is everywhere. She is a social luxury. So a lot of type A artists are aiming to be this. That's the goal of most R&B and any entertainers. You want to be a social luxury. You want people to like you whether you sell or not. Well, actually, yes, you need to sell, but whether people buy your album or not, your name has to be out there, so you end up establishing a brand, and people will always support whatever you put out. Because once you become a social luxury, it doesn't just stop with the music. Now you can launch perfume lines and mini record labels and clothing lines and start a business, and you can come out with all these different things and get makeup endorsements and hair endorsements, and you do this, and you can open a school here specifically to teach people how to rap and do this. And then when you're a social luxury, you get invited to all venues of promotion. So not only do you get to go on Arsenio, you get to go on David Letterman, and you get to go on NPR, and you get to hang with the president, and you get to be in the Macy's commercial. And when your face comes on somebody's television, or when you walk down the sidewalk in a neighborhood where you most likely wouldn't fit in, people aren't afraid of you, and people recognize you and think you're the coolest thing ever. A social luxury. Okay, so what happened to a lot of these type A R&B artists who are now struggling to stay relevant, especially now that their sound is popular but they just aren't? This is what happened. Many of these acts fell into that trap where it turned into they were not able to specifically create a fan base, keep their fan base, and stay socially relevant. And I think some of the acts that fell into that bubble would be somebody like Brandy or Mom, because much as I love both of them, and Brandy stands, please don't fight me. Y'all know I'm a Brandy. Well, I'm not a stan. I only stand for Jesus and Obama. And Janet, depending on what day of the week it is. But I'm a big Brandy fan. But You know, when you look at Brandy's last two projects, Human and 211, both albums were great albums, especially for her fan base. The fans loved the albums because the albums were exactly what the fans wanted. However, to people who were non-fans and to people who don't really check for Brandy, the material on both albums were not something that would really keep the attention span of someone who has a mainstream attention span when it comes to music. When I say mainstream attention span, I'm talking you have a 30-second attention span, and basically you're spoon-fed what's hot and what's not. And because Brandy is not being spoon-fed to the masses as being currently hot, she automatically gets ignored. Same thing for Monica. Same thing for Sierra at the moment. Same thing for Fantasia. Tamar's climbing her way out of that, and she's kind of cool because of the reality show and people like her personality. But when it comes to the music, pop audiences are not really checking for her either. So, you know, Brandy fell into that position. And what kind of made me feel bad when 211 came out, I remember saying this in one of the videos, you know, Put It Down I thought was a really smart move for a project, but I did not agree with Wildest Dreams being the next single, because Wildest Dreams was a song that was for her fans like me to appreciate, because we love it. It has a 90s vibe, and we can just, Brandy fans, we love all of the technique and the vocal runs that Brandy does vocally, because vocally Brandy is just astonishing. However, a song like Wildest Dreams is great for me, but if I'm random Joe from whatever part of Kentucky, Wildest Dreams isn't going to do anything for me. Because one, the sound, it's not what everybody else is doing. It's not the trend. It wasn't EDM. And at the time in 2012, EDM was still kind of hanging in there. It wasn't EDM. And on top of that, it has a very 90s urban hip-hop vibe to it. And at the moment, that's unpopular to us mainstream acts because that's not what we're into. So it didn't do as well. Same thing for Monica with New Life. The material on that album, even though I still don't like it, I'm sure her fans appreciated it and it was something for her fans. But for the masses who would be like, okay, well, what are you going to give me that's going to keep me entertained? New Life didn't quite do that. So that's where that fell in. And this is what kind of disappointed me about what's going on right now. As we know, the EDM sound, as far as electronic dance music, techno, pop, we're going to fist pump all day, that sound started dying out towards the end of 2012. And by the summer of 2013, it was really on a downfall. And by the end of 2013, it was dead. And this would explain why Jason Derulo's struggling, why Kesha's having a hard time, why Lady Gaga didn't do that great. Because that sound is no longer, you look. It's like 1 in the morning and I'm making this video. The sound is no longer popular. So what got me was we were well aware that this sound was dying out. And this was the perfect time to experiment and try new sounds and jump into different things. And literally only one entertainer attempted to do that or even come out with a project. And that was Beyonce. And I'm not going to spend this video kissing her behind, but she was very smart in what she did. Now, Beyonce's of a different caliber because, yes, she's a social luxury artist. So even if she would have burped in the mic, it would have been a huge hit. But at the same time, Beyonce took the time to dive into many different productions and all this other great stuff and go so left field from what everybody else was doing. And she did it with 4 also. Okay, when everybody was doing EDM, she went with 4, which was a very R&B album. And as a matter of fact, she had a song where she was modulating Love on Top. So, you know, she said, I'm going to still do my own thing, which helped her seal her brand as an entertainer who has created her own lane. Alright, so by the time she came out with the Beyonce project, which I thought the marketing for that was brilliant, and only somebody like Beyonce or maybe Rihanna could do that. I don't think too many other people can just come out with an album and people will flock and buy it without any promotion. But the sound and everything, Beyonce experimented. Her team recognized that EDM was dying, which probably explains why there was such a long delay in the release of that project and her fans were getting pissed off. Where's our new music? What the F? You did the Super Bowl, you did all this great stuff, and you're on tour and you're not giving us anything. And Beyonce's like, well, you know, I'm trying to fill out where music's going and we have to make this album and kind of guess what the popular sound is going to be in 2014. And that kind of took me back to Janet Jackson going into the Janet era back in 93. Back in 92, New Jack Swing was dying. And what Janet did with the Janet album, because even going into 93, New Jack Swing was dying, instead of her coming out with the New Jack Swing all dance extravaganza like everybody else had been doing, she said, let me go left field, I'm going to slow things down a bit, and I'm going to do That's the Way Love Goes. And it was this sound that wasn't really, it was so unfamiliar, but it was new, it was fresh, and because Janet Jackson in 93 was a social luxury entertainer, she was able to set the trend for what that sound would be for the next 2 years. Alright, so instead of us all New Jack swinging and footworking and doing the kid and play all day, we kind of slowed things down a bit. So then this is where the In Vogue Runaway Loves came out, and the Babyface This Is For The Cool You, and then Toni Braxton emerged, and it was kind of cool to slow things down a bit. And then, you know, TLC Crazy Sexy Cool wasn't a full New Jack Swing album like Ooh on the TLC Tip was, but rather a real mellow, hey. And I feel like Janet gets a lot of credit for some of that. Some of you may disagree, but in '93, when That's the Way Love Goes came out, that was the first song that had that type of vibe to it, and that's what Beyonce did. So I really wish more entertainers would have experimented and tried new sounds. I think Janelle Monáe did a great job of doing that with her project. I love that album. Of course, nobody bought it because she's not quite a social luxury entertainer, and labels don't really know what to do with her. But, you know, I think there's still time for a lot of these artists to come out with these experimental sounds, because this whole urban sound that's out now is not even really, you know, it's not sealed and permanent yet, and there's still options for new sounds to come in. So a lot of you R&B acts, Brandy, Jasmine, all you other ones that are out, I need y'all to just come on, let's do this. Get in that studio and just start experimenting. Don't do what everybody's doing right now. Do something that's left field from what everybody's doing, because when you bring something fresh and new to the table, it sets the tone for what everybody else is gonna do. All right, moving on. And that leads me to my next part. A lot of these R&B acts struggle with anticipation for their projects. And I said this in the video before, but basically, if you have no anticipation, why are we buying your album? Nobody's checking for you. So, I always say that basically, in order to keep anticipation for your album, you have to be very creative. One, your previous album era has to end on a strong note. If you let your album fade out, most likely you're gonna have to fade into your new album. You have to go back up a hill. All right. When your album era ends on a bad note, it's hard for people to want to get your next one. And I think that's what happened to Ciara. If you look at the evolution when it came out, it started out huge. Goodies was a good era and it ended on a strong note. And then here comes the evolution. She did the Step Up soundtrack. You know, Get Up was a pretty moderate pop hit or whatever, and then she comes out with Promise, and the CD sells 300 however many thousand copies the first week. CDs on a fast pace. Ciara's the hot new thing or whatever, and she's the only act at the moment that was able to keep up with Beyonce, because she just came out with Beat It and was selling all these records like crazy. And Ciara changes management right during the middle of the album era. Things change. The next two singles after Like a Boy do not do as well, so the Can't Leave 'Em Alone and the That's Right are literally ignored by radio and the masses. Meaning, by the time she gets to Fantasy Ride, there's not a lot of anticipation for her album. And then her team cannot figure out what sound she's going for. So, you know, they released the Go Girl and they released the High Price and all these different songs. And they're all so left field from each other. And at the same time, people don't know what she's going to do. And then out of nowhere, she goes extremely pop and does the Love, Sex, and Magic with Justin Timberlake, automatically kind of alienating the fan base that she had already developed and established. Remember what I said about when you want to keep a fan base or build your brand. You keep your fan base, you build a new one, and you stay relevant. Ciara kind of lost a lot of her fan base, and she was kind of still relevant, but she didn't create a new fan base with her Fantasy Ride project, which had her struggle as you got into Basic Instinct and the Ciara album. Alright, so, you know, you have to have album anticipation. If your album era ends terribly, most likely it's going to start terribly. One thing I think that's really smart to do is soundtracks. If you can get a good hit off a soundtrack, it's a great way to stay relevant. Going back to Janet, the Velvet Rope album, in my opinion, was not an album that was as massive as the previous three Janet super albums, Janet, Rhythm Nation, and Control. It was a lot slower. It didn't sell as much. The label had a hard time. They used to disagree on the singles, so technically it only had 2 official U.S. singles, even though there were 6 singles. What kept that era afloat was the fact that Janet had a massive tour, and she was already a social luxury artist, so people were going to buy her album because it was Janet Jackson. So Velvet Rope kind of ends on a so-so note. Not too great, but it was a cool album. Now, critically, it's probably her best project, along with Rhythm Nation. But what they did was, she does Nutty Professor the Clumps movie, which I also think people should also jump into movies and stay out there. But anyway, she does Nutty Professor the Clumps movie, and she contributes to the soundtrack. She releases Doesn't Really Matter. It becomes her 9th #1 hit. And this is the summer of 2000. And she's in the studio currently working on the All For You project. Now, Doesn't Really Matter has enough lifeline that it pulls and keeps her relevant socially as far as music, because also Janet is now like in her 30s. She's like 33 at this point. And now, you know, you have the younger Britney Spears, who's basically white Janet, that's out. And you have Christina, you have all these other acts who have been basically inspired by Janet, who are now doing what Janet does on a grand scale. So now Janet's going to have some competition when she comes back out. But anyway, Doesn't Really Matter is a song that becomes a huge hit, it leads to anticipation for the next project. So when All For You, the actual song, comes out, radio is like, oh yeah, we remember Janet because she just had that really great song that people kept requesting in the summer. So we'll go ahead and blast and we'll put All For You out. And as a matter of fact, All For You debuted at like number 14 on the Hot 100 because there was that much anticipation for the song, because she built up anticipation coming out of the Velvet Rope Tour into the Nutty Professor 2 soundtrack and into the All For You era. So when you build anticipation, that's how things help you out. Now going back to my experimentation, this is why I think Usher fell off, right? Because honestly, Usher was huge. Usher honestly should be where Beyonce is because he came out around the same time. Technically, when you talk about physical sales of albums, he sold more albums than her. And it's funny that now he's literally irrelevant to music. He is no longer in the social luxury club. He's not quite a type A artist. He's like a step above them. So he got in the party just before the Doritos ran out. So he got a good handful, and he's up there chewing and all this other stuff. But technically, he's not really getting invited to the party anymore either. But what Usher, I think, did was similar to, I think, what happened with Sierra. As we know, 8701 was a huge era, and it led into Confessions, which was an even bigger era. And then Confessions just ended on such a good note, and here comes Here I Stand. And Here I Stand starts out great, but the material isn't quite what the masses want, because remember what I said about mainstream artists, they have short attention span. Here I Stand is an album that's very R&B and very traditional R&B, and on top of that, Usher's image was all over the place because of the marriage with Tamika Raymond and stuff. So Here I Am, the project, comes out on a weird note, and it doesn't do that great. You know, so leading into the Raymond vs. Raymond era, that era also starts slow and has to climb. Fortunately, Usher had the OMG song, which basically helped the Raymond vs. Raymond album be revitalized, and then he re-released it and had some more hits. But now Usher, instead of experimenting and being creative, he hopped on the EDM sound, and he literally lost a lot of his R&B fan base. Going back to what I said about you keep your fan base, you build a new fan base, and you stay relevant. He did two of those things. He kind of built a new fan base as far as the EDM stuff, and he stayed relevant, but he abandoned his original fan base. So when we get to the next album, which is the Looking For Myself or Finding Myself album, he comes out with Climax as the first single. Climax is a very R&B song that has nothing to do with EDM. Now, who was the last audience that was checking for Usher based off of the last project? The mainstream EDM crowd, because they, baby tonight, they got us falling in love again. Oh, and then the oh my god, they were having a good time. So now that he's come out with Climax, that party that was fist pumping, or that audience is like, what the hell, we don't want this, nope, you can go back to your R&B, whatever. And the R&B fans that he tries to go back to are like, that's cool and all, but Chris Brown is out now, and we still have Trey Songz. So, and even John Legend and Neo are kind of still hanging around. So we're cool, Usher, we're cool. We don't need you. And that's kind of what's messed up Usher. So my suggestion to Usher would be he has to revitalize his image and his sound and really jump into experimenting and trying something different and new. Because there's no reason why he shouldn't be as big as Beyonce is. Because they are from the same era. They have the same standard for entertainment when it comes to being on the stage. They both were huge, well, one is, but the other was a huge entertainer that literally transcended all audiences as far as racial backgrounds, and now, you know, he's been put back in this weird bubble where he's kind of relevant in the R&B world, but to everybody else, nobody cares. So he has to watch out for that. And this is where I get to another entertainer who confuses me, and that's Kelly Rowland. You know, Kelly Rowland confuses me because Kelly Rowland is 1/3 or 1/4 or 1/6, depending on how many members you count, of the largest girl group in the world, depending on who you ask. And Kelly Rowland has been in the game for like 15 or 16 years. And Kelly Rowland is still in that type A bubble, and she's never really quite climbed out, except for when there's Destiny's Child reunions. But as a solo act, she's never quite climbed out. She had a shot when she first came out. She had The Limit, and it was a huge hit because originally she was doing better than Beyonce. But for some reason, things just keep going wrong with Kelly. And for me, I feel like a lot of it is, I don't know, because I think Kelly is in a different boat than a lot of the A entertainers, because Kelly has more resources than a lot of them when it comes to projects and promotion. The labels give her a lot of chances and opportunities compared to somebody like a Brandy, who only will get a single and a half, and if they don't do well, that's the end of your project. Someone like Kelly, if you remember the I Am Here era, she had like 6 music videos before the CD even came out. But what gets me with Kelly is, Kelly could be so huge, but I feel like personally she just doesn't care. She's kind of like, hey y'all, I got an album, it's out, get it if you feel like it. Other than that, I'll be on X Factor. And yes, it's great she's on X Factor getting her millions. And yes, it's great that she's referenced in a lot of rap songs. And yes, it's great that she's a beautiful woman, but I feel like Kelly should be so much bigger. Now, she's smart that she hops on a lot of collaborative efforts and she does a lot of hooks with people. That's one way to kind of keep her relevant in the R&B world. But I really think Kelly has an opportunity to jump and cross over into the pop world. And that's mainly because she has a lot of qualities that you're not going to be able to get out of the other entertainers. One, people already know who she is. Because she was a part of Destiny's Child, people know her. So people are willing to give her a shot. But for some reason, musically, she keeps jumping on whatever trend is popular and it's not helping her. And for the longest, she was going with this whole sex kitten sound since 2010 with the Motivation and the Ice and, you know, even Talk a Good Game, which is a very nice little R&B album, is very sexualized. But now that Beyonce has turned into a sex kitten and has erased her wholesome image, it's like, well, Kelly, we loved you and that's cool, but now that Beyonce's doing it and, you know, she's already this social luxury that everybody loves, we can just kind of go with Beyonce. So Kelly, yeah. And what makes me mad about Kelly is I was watching Black Girls Rock and Kelly performed the Gone song and Kelly killed this performance. It was like really good, and not just good, but like really good as in, Kelly, I didn't even know you had that in you. And then it made me mad, like, Kelly, what the F are you doing? If you can do that for Black Girls Rock, why have you not been doing that since the Miss Kelly album, since the Here I Am album, since the Talk a Good Game? Like, what have you been doing? Like, Kelly could have been so, like, going back to the Miss Kelly era, I never understood that era. One, it came out, I loved the Like This song, but for some reason, of course, Like This was not going to do well because one, they're going to pit her against Beyonce, and at the time that Like This came out, Beyonce was getting bodied and we were all in the club partying, so Kelly automatically lost. And then the follow-up singles did not do what they needed to do. Now, she had a lot of success overseas in Europe and did well, but in America she has just not been able to conquer. But I feel like Kelly is somebody who has to recraft her brand. I think because she is so popular in entertainment and she's always going to have a way to support herself, she doesn't really dive into music as much as the other entertainers would. But it's just disturbing because she could be so huge if she wanted to be. She has the resources. People know who she is. Hell, she is freaking buddy with Beyonce and all of them. Like, she has opportunities that entertainers like Keisha Cole doesn't have. So, you know, basically, somehow even Ashanti doesn't have the same resources that Kelly gets. But Kelly chooses not to utilize them. Or Kelly releases a CD and then that's the end of it, after which she just stops caring. So I don't know, Kelly. I need you to do something. I have so much more I want to say, but this video is really long. So what I'll do is I'll probably have a part 11 uploaded very soon. I'm trying to jump back into putting videos out a little bit more frequently so you guys don't have to wait 2 and 3 months for a video. But bear with me. In the meantime, you can watch Generation Black, okay? And spread it around, please. Alright, I'm out. Subscribe. Let me know what you think. Also in the comments, you can also add and request what you think I should also cover when dealing with R&B instead. I think I really do want to do a video about appropriation of black music by pop culture. But I feel like it's already been done by everybody else on YouTube, and you know where I'll go when I do mine. I don't want to kind of talk about something and beat a dead horse, but if that's what you all would like me to talk about, I will definitely bring it up and do it in a way that will not offend everybody. Alright, I'm out.